Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Mark. Today we're looking at the second half of Mark chapter 6, beginning in verse 30 and going down through the end of the chapter. And as we read our text the last time, we noticed that there were several different events, but also several different things that we could hone in on to look at some lessons that are applicable to us. Let's take a look at some of those today. At the beginning of our text, in verses 30 and following, you have the disciples coming back from the first time where they have been sent out to go and to proclaim the message of Jesus on their own, as you see earlier on in chapter 6. And when they return, I want you to notice how Jesus responds to them in verses 31 and 32. Because there he says, "Come aside by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." You know, they have been working very diligently. They have been working very hard, and Jesus has as well. And so he tells them, "Come with me, let's go to a quiet, deserted place and just rest for a while." Jesus recognizes the importance of rest. You know, in the Old Testament law, there was a day of rest that was set up. It was called the Sabbath day, where there was to be no work done. People were just simply to rest. They were to focus on God. They were to get themselves rejuvenated and reset. God has always understood the importance and the value for the human mind and body to have rest. We often live in a world today where rest is considered laziness, where if we're not going constantly, if we don't constantly have something on our plate that has to be done right this moment, that we are not being successful or we are not reaching our potential. And yet at the same time, we have to find a way to balance a good work ethic and hard work and diligent service and things of that nature with the need for rest, the need to recharge the batteries, as it were, or to recoup our energy. Jesus here illustrates that God understands the importance of rest. Now, that doesn't mean that we should spend the majority of our time resting and not working, but it does mean there is a balance to be struck. There is something that must be done in order to enable us to rest appropriately. As you come down a little bit further in the text, you find that even though Jesus and his disciples go out into a deserted place, the crowds are going to follow them, and the crowds are going to find them very quickly afterwards. And it's here where you see one of the great illustrations of Jesus' compassion. Because Jesus could have become angry that his rest was interrupted. Or he could have become upset, and he could have been very strict and very stringent about his time and what it was that he was supposed to be able to have, or the freedoms that he didn't have to just go where he wanted and do what he wanted. And yet that's not how Jesus reacts. As a matter of fact, in verse 34, it says, "And Jesus, when he came out, saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion for them, because they were like sheep not having a shepherd." But that compassion is going to lead him to do two different things. And it's the way that his compassion leads him to work that I want us to hone in on. Because yes, having compassion is important, but what does our compassion cause us to do? You know, the first thing that it caused Jesus to do was to teach the people, to show them the truth, to give them what it was that they needed that was the most important. And then he has compassion on their physical needs and he feeds them. He gives them physical food. You know, so many times in our world today, we want to flip-flop those. We want to take care of all of the physical needs first, and then if we get around to it, we'll try to teach people. Jesus recognized the importance of putting the teaching of a soul first, and then the feeding and the taking care of the body. Are we showing the proper levels of compassion that Jesus did? Are we being like Jesus, not just from the standpoint of having compassion, but utilizing the compassion in the proper way. Because if the only thing we're concerned about in our compassion is the individual's physical body, the food that they need, the clothing that they need, and things of that nature, that's not godly compassion. That's not compassion that cares enough about their soul to tell them what they need to know. Instead, that is simply a compassion that cares about physical things, and those things are going to go away eventually. Jesus' compassion was on both sides, and it focused first on what was truly important, the spiritual side, and then it gave them what their immediate needs were on the physical side. So we need to understand Jesus' compassion and the way that he interacted with those crowds. The third thing that you notice in this particular text is Jesus walking on the sea out to the disciples after all of this. He's going to send them ahead. He is going to go to the mountain to pray. He is going to have some of that time to refresh and to recharge just on his own in his prayer to the Father. But then he is going to go out and he is going to walk on the sea, verse 48, back out to them because they're straining in the boat because the winds are against them. But why? Why did it matter that he walked out to them? I find it interesting to note that it says within the text that their hearts had been hardened against truly understanding the power and the importance of what Jesus had done in feeding the 5,000 men in the earlier parts of the chapter. They did not comprehend what that meant. They knew it was an amazing thing. They knew that just like healing people, it was something that Jesus could do that others could not. But they did not truly grasp the depth and the immensity of the power that Jesus holds and the importance of what that meant about who he was. He was not an ordinary man by any stretch of the imagination. When Jesus walks on the sea, it is proof that he is not just a man. He is more than that. He is God in the flesh. He is the Son of God. And that is going to be illustrated over and over again. His disciples aren't fully going to grasp it for some time yet, but they're going to start to comprehend the measure of the power of Jesus. These are some of the things that stand out to me when it comes to the latter portions of Mark chapter 6. I hope that they're beneficial to you. Next time we'll come back and we'll begin looking at Mark chapter 7. I hope you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.